specifically mentioning that 2013 wild card game, the biggest unique thing about that was the Johnny Cueto, the heckling. All the fans were doing it. He ends up falling off the mound. It was just a whole funny experience. What was your reaction to it? Either, again, I'm sure you were broadcasting it. What was your reaction to that when you first heard about that and saw it, though, just how that all unfolded?
I made a critical mistake. First of all, I have a one-track mind. I can't multitask, and I watch other broadcasters in awe as I watch them do all kinds of things. They pull out notebooks. They do it right on their scorecard. They've got a great memory bank. My memory is awful, so I write down a bunch of stuff in my scorebook. So I know my limitations, and especially for me.
Greg?
When
there you go.
I think a play is over, but I made a critical mistake of looking down and trying to read my ineligible writing. Illegible. I can't. My writing is awful. My penmanship. And I'd written something down on a scorebook, and I took too long. And by the time I looked back up, the ball was on the ground, and I heard a reaction of the crowd. I didn't know what happened. And so when Cueto goes down to pick it up, I was on the radio broadcast. Of course, it's a national telecast. TBS was doing the national telecast, so we were radio only that night for our network. And I then kind of recovered and realized what had happened. He had dropped the ball. I didn't know why, but I said something like, "Oh," I kind of chuckled then after trying to figure that out. Cueto had dropped the ball when he had gone into his stretch. And the very next pitch, Martin hits the home run. And I got so caught up in the play. I mean, and I understand the criticism of me. My style is one of being maybe too much of a fan, which I understand that criticism. There's a fine line there, but a friend of mine is a longtime hockey broadcaster for the Penguins. My mentor, Mike Lang, when I first came on board, always said, "Don't ever be a fake. People can tell a phony. You don't try and be someone you're not. You got to be who you are." So anyway, the point being that Martin hits his home run, and I went into Martin was born just outside of Montreal. He grew up. He's French speaking. He speaks French, and his anyway, that's part of his heritage. And I went into kind of a French accent after he had homered. I just got caught up in this like it was, and I haven't heard that call for a long time until about 2 weeks ago. Our radio flagship has been playing classic games, and they played that game, and I happened to be driving around. This actually just before kind of the stay-at-home orders had been issued by our governor, and so I was listening on the radio and heard that call, and I wanted to turn it off. I was cringing because I wanted this kind of French accent, but I really was again caught up in it, as were so many people. And then from that point forward, and to this day, people have talked about this Cueto game. And they talk about how they were there. It seems like there were 2 million people there that night now who saw Cueto drop the ball. And it was, and fans believe that it was they who created this situation that forced Cueto to drop the ball and then deliver a home run ball to Russell Martin. So it's kind of like as time goes on, it kind of lives on in Pirates lore.
We are talking to the voice of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Greg Brown. Well, Greg, what are your thoughts of baseball implementing the DH to the National League?
You guys did your research, didn't you?
Yes, we have, my friend. Yes, we have.
You knew the one thing that would raise my Irish ire. Well, obviously, you know my feelings about the DH.
Of course, but my fans don't.
It's gotten to the point where I've had some higher ups in the organization sit me down and tell me, you really got to calm down with this thing. But as I've told them, and I've tried to tell fans on either face to face or on those that love the DH, that want it, and that get angry at me for doing the hashtag ban the DH and passionately defending National League Baseball. the reason I am so passionate about it is because I do believe it's a different game, and I believe the National League is a better game. I grew up on the National League, and I've had our flagship station. I do a weekly show on our flagship station in Pittsburgh, and the two hosts have called me the old man that says, "Get off my lawn." That guy, get with the times, Greg. And I just vehemently disagree with that. And I defend National League Baseball, and I hear all the arguments for the DH, but I've watched enough American League Baseball. Now that we have interleague play, I've actually broadcast games in American League cities. And I am more convinced than ever National League ball is better than American League ball. And it's so involved. It's more than a 2-minute phone conversation or or an interview on a radio station. To truly understand the importance and how great a game the National League is, you have to appreciate the game itself and its roots. And I think too often baseball has gotten away from its roots, and too often it tries to catch up to other sports. We want to be more like the NFL or the NBA. We're going to introduce replay now because that's what they're doing. We're going to put a clock in. The NHL, the NBA, the soccer. Instead of chasing other sports, I wish baseball, and I understand that you do have to change to a degree with the times, but to a degree. If you look at how many changes baseball has made over the short decade even, if baseball is trying to attract more and a younger audience, then they should really look at the research of what they've done over the last 5 years. And their purpose was to increase the younger audience, but that has failed. So by doing what they're doing, that's obviously not working. But I don't hear people saying that. And I believe you guys. I tell you, I've been so passionate about it. I've interviewed Bud Selig when he was leaving as the commissioner of baseball, was doing a farewell tour, and he went through all these ballparks, and he made the mistake of entering our broadcast booth in Pittsburgh, and we did the regular interview, and I said, Commissioner, before you leave, I need you to promise me you will not let the American League allow the designated hitter to enter the National League. And I had him on the air. This was live. And he didn't necessarily put his hand on a Bible, but he said, no, that'll never happen. Something like that. And he kind of hurried his way out of the booth. And then last summer, I did it again with the Commissioner Manfred. I said, please, Commissioner, don't do it. Don't let the DH come into the National League. And he didn't. I think he kind of changed the subject. But the point is, I've said this to Pirate fans over Q&A sessions, over speaking engagements. So they brought this up, and they said, can't you just accept it? Other people have said this to me almost angrily. Can't you just accept it? It's coming. And what are you going to do when the DH comes to the National League? Because you've been so adamant against it. What are you going to do then? And right. I say, I will cross that bridge when I get to it. Until then, why do we concede anything? We should never give up until it happens. Fight for every National League city should fight. All fans should fight, because I believe if every National League city did that, it has no chance of coming into the National League, the DH.
We are talking to the voice of Greg Brown. And yes, he's the voice of the great Pittsburgh Pirates. But, Greg, this is my last question. And you were just speaking of Commissioner Rob Manfred, who I can't stand. I have spoken not too highly of him throughout our shows throughout the last couple of weeks. What is your thoughts of his handling of the Houston Astros?
Oh, I don't know. I guess my thought is that he's trying to do the best he can. He's doing what's best for the game, what he believes is best for the game, and he gets a lot of, I'm sure, advice from people. I think he's a great baseball fan. I see that, having sat with him enough to know that. And he doesn't get to where he is unless he is that. He has to answer to a lot of people. My problem is not with what the commissioner did. Actually, it's what kind of baseball has done, and it goes back to the point about the tradition of the game. It's all part and parcel to that. What has happened is that they've created a culture now by changing rules, by not wanting, for example, collisions at home plate because they want to stay up with the times, because they don't want collisions at second base. They now don't want pitchers hitting batters ever. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess it might even been, you would have pitchers who, and in fact, I've asked pitchers who pitched not too fairly recently, no longer in the game, but fairly recently. Tell me because I feel this way about myself. I'm a competitor enough that if I'm on the mound in Houston and I'm pitching and I see this something's happening, my catcher certainly knows it's happening because you guys have probably seen the YouTube video from a couple years ago. White Sox, Danny Farquhar. It's not a huge crowd at Minute Maid Park. You're hearing the sound, and anytime it's a breaking ball, you're hearing the sound. When it's a fastball, you don't hear the trash can. The catcher comes out and talks to Farquhar, and you can see him saying something like, "They've got our signs." So if the Astros hitter at Minute Maid can hear the trash can banging, then it stands to reason that the catcher can hear the trash can banging. So they know something's up, the catcher. And then therefore the pitcher probably does. How can those two together, or one, either the catcher or the pitcher, or both, walk over to the Astros dugout between innings and say, "Hey guys, just so you know, every time I hear that trash can or whatever that noise is, that is my signal to hit that batter square in the back." And then it's over. There's no need for any of this. That all ends. If the players are allowed to police themselves, they need to do that. In my opinion, baseball should do that. Let the players police themselves. And by doing that, you have to give a lot of authority back to the umpires, which they should also do. Then this whole thing doesn't happen. One of my cohorts, John Wayner, talked to an umpire in the last few months, and I don't know where it was, or I forget the circumstance, but he asked him the question, "Did you hear those trash cans banging in Houston 2 years ago?" And the umpire at home, when he was umpiring at home plate, he said, "Of course." So the umpire hears it, the batter hears it. That means the catcher had to hear it. Everyone's hearing it. How can you, as a pitcher, an opposing pitcher, allow them to do that? So it got too far beyond where it should have to blame the commissioner. I blame any pitcher who's trying to win a game and who's trying to put, as they say, put food on my family's table. I'm earning a living. How can you allow them to cheat outwardly like that? I cannot understand that for the life of me, because I know me, who never played one inning of semi-pro ball, let alone professional ball. If I were out there and they were doing that, that's what I would have done. I'd gone to the dugout and said, "Boys, just so you know, I'm hearing it, and the next time I do, somebody's getting in the back of the neck." And again, like I said, it's over at that point. That doesn't happen again.